joining me now to answer some of these questions is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Jaiyeola. Good morning, Mr. Jaiyeola.
Good morning, Chimeze. Nice. Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, as a leading policy advocacy body in the country, what rescue plan has the NESG prepared for the government in the light of the prevailing situation in the country?
Well, again, there are two aspects of the discussion. First, how do we support to ensure that we all successfully navigate this challenge we have with a pandemic? And then how do we deal with issues that will arise post the pandemic? So we're giving support around how to ensure we have better coordination between the federal and the state government, how to ensure better coordination between the public sector and the private sector. All this we're doing with them to ensure that as much as possible, there is appropriate testing, appropriate contract tracing, there is quarantine, and we can treat those that, of course, move to the latter part or in a chain. But beyond that, we all know that we're facing two challenges. The challenge of, do we wholesomely lock down our people, or do we begin to see a gradual release of the economy? Noting very well that whatever happened after the economy, there is either a recession, and if it's not well managed, we will fall into a depression. So all these discussions we're having with them, and we hope they will listen, because at this point in time, all hands as Nigerians must be on deck.
Governor of the Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, recently came up with a 27-page speech, which he titled, "Turning the COVID-19 Tragedy into an Opportunity for a New Nigeria," describing the disruptions caused by the pandemic as an opportunity to re-echo the need for Nigerians to start looking inwards as a nation. In the light of this, what kind of public-private dialogue is going on at this time to rescue the Nigerian economy?
Well, again, both the monetary authorities, the fiscal authorities, and the private sector need to talk together. Okay, let me first start by commending whatever it is the governor of the central bank has done, and of course the measures being taken by the Minister of Finance, all working together. But it is evident that what we are facing is bigger than whatever has been done now. If you look at it, take the average size of our GDP that amounts to about $400 billion. If you lock down by one month, you probably are dealing with about $33 billion. And translate that, that tells you about 10 trillion thereabout. If you look at the drop in the oil, so the amount of resources required is huge. So what are we doing? We are currently discussing with government regarding how deep is the hole we need to fill. Because it's not only to fill the hole that has arisen out of the depression, but you need to think about how do you again jumpstart the economy and make the economy work again, so that at least we don't find ourselves stay too much on the U. Or, people are saying this is going to be a V or a U. In 2016, our depression was a V shape. We're going to look at it to make sure that if we're not careful, it's not a U. So these discussions are going on. Of course, they are recognizing how do we raise the necessary funding, what kind of policies we need to take, which sectors do we need to give priority to. It is evident that whatever it is we do, we need to pay significant attention to small and medium scale enterprise. We need to pay attention to the likes of agriculture, and we need to pay attention to how do we facilitate and make businesses work better. Noting fully well that externally, there are some supply disruptions that isn't going to take time almost. It's going to take an immediate time to unwind. And even if they get to unwind it, nations are going to look at themselves first. Of course, it's important that in this problem, you look at sectors you will need to help and give some reasonable bailout to. I sometimes wonder, what do happen to the airline business? What's happening to the hospitality business? What's happening to all the banks too that are dealing with these loans that some of these sectors already have? So it's a whole lot of discussions about how do you bail out, would you bail out, what's effective, and how do you generate the needed needed money to actually fill the port and then get Nigeria on the right path of growth.
Yeah. So now the government has set up the Economic Sustainability Committee chaired by the Vice President. How are you connecting with the committee? What level of input is the private sector making?
Of course, no, you realize the NES and that NES what has to ask for opinion and what we think, and we're making this readily available. But at the same time, what we will always ask government is to notice that whatever it is that is made available, all of it should be looked at together. You recognize again that most of these things are being done through teleconferences and meetings because a lot of us can't move around because we need to observe the social distancing and there are no movement around. But those inputs have been made across to them.
The world's largest economy with a GDP of about $20.58 trillion, approximately 25% of global GDP. It is also responsible for 8% of Nigerian total imports. The U.S. just announced that about 26 million people are jobless and that growth is projected to plunge to -5% in 2020. Again, China, a major trading partner with Nigeria, reported negative growth of -6.8% in the first quarter. Now, as the head of the NESG, how would you advise Nigerian policymakers to position itself to respond to the sharp downturn in the fortunes of two of its leading trading partners?
Well, again, you realize that what do we trade with these people? Mostly you find out that oil is what we trade with them. And China, we import a lot of our intermediary goods with them. And that's why we have said that we're going to have challenges in the short run. But this again provides Nigeria the opportunity to do all that most of us have been talking before, but we haven't taken significantly seriously. And that is, how do we do effective backward integration? How do you look at the things made in Nigeria? So in the short run, all will not give us the necessary income that we require. But we need to first look at sustaining ourselves locally, which is why attention we need to pay for our Greek. But in order to make sure that we have value to whatever it is we do, we don't then have to do just crop production exportation, raw commodities. We need to go as far as what we need to do to begin to add value to those things. I think in immediate hands, what we need to do is first and foremost to stop the leak and ensure that we are sufficient in terms of how much food we have locally, because at the end of this pandemic, if we don't manage it very, very well, there's a challenge of food crisis at hand. How do we ensure that people don't lose jobs? And happily in Nigeria, 85% of our jobs, are offered by the MSME sectors. So how do we ensure that these MSME sectors are not out of business? What kind of support do we give them? So those are the things we need to do in the short term. In the long term, of course, when we come back and we are adding value to all the other sectors of our economy that is diversified but we have not been adding value to, we'll then be able to come up and then see what exactly we're going to export. There's no doubt that this particular environment gives a lot of opportunities. But beyond our export, one of the things we need to pay attention to will be, how do we spend our money? How do we ensure effective value optimization from every money we spend in times like this? And that gives the opportunity for all of us to sit down, whether it be government or private sector, to look at how we do business and how we can do it a lot more efficiently. There's no doubt that it cannot be business as usual again.
So what cocktail of policy measures would you prescribe for the policymakers in this new environment, and what policies would you suggest should be removed from the supplementary budget of 2020?
Well, supplementary budget, again, you realize that before now, the minister had gone to the National Assembly requesting that we use $30 as benchmark, and then they were expecting that maybe we'll be able to export about 1.3 billion barrels a day. The reality is that $30 million is not feasible. In the short run, we hope that when the court stepped in between the OPEC Plus and Co. May 1. Maybe we will see a gradual comeback. But because most of the supplies, the supply is down and most of the economy are not doing well, it's not likely that we're going to have those 30. So what we probably will require will be a lot larger than that. So what does government need to do? First and foremost, we need to see how to get support, raise money internationally. It's good that government is talking with the IMF and the World Bank and all the people. But more importantly, we think government should look inward too, to raise money. I mean, these are times when we'll throw out some long-term 3 to 4 year bond locally, and then be able to mop up some of the resources locally so that we can fill the gap. But I haven't raised that money locally. What is important is how does government begin to spend this money? We need to begin to look at sectors that will give significant impact. First and foremost, how do we keep people at work so that they don't go home? And that's why I talked about the MSME initially. What do we do to the MSMEs? We need to begin to look at things around our taxes. Part of the things that the MSME has been complaining about has made them a lot more inefficient, has been the plurality of taxes. And these are not only at federal level, at state and even local government level. And depending on the state you're dealing with, some of them range from about 4 to about 32. We need to streamline that and ensure that we take this on them. For the MSMEs, we need to ensure that they have regular access to power. Right, and this is not impossible, and this offers us right a time to show that we do our power enough. Part of the things we'll find out is that because we are going to have an appropriate pricing of our naira, I mean, as at the last count, naira is about 386 officially, depending on who you talk to and depending on how much we deal with this, we might still have some small revaluation. But if we do an appropriate pricing, we might be able to attract some foreign currency investment too. That will help us, of course, do the needed support. Now, so you will have the MSME sector, but more importantly, we need to pay attention to how do we get women and agri work. And agri we're looking at is not just about the raw production. Even at a very bad yield per acre, we still are subject to close to about 50 to 60% post-harvest losses. So money will be spent to ensure that we don't lose those things, because what do? We do some value addition. So agri is important, but beyond that, government itself needs to look at its own internal workings. Where does government cut money in times like these? There might be the need for government to look at, I mean, some of the reports they have before now regarding how do you deal with the multiple parastatals and the kind of work they do. So that again is on the table. Of course, we're discussing more with the PublicPrivate to see how we can strengthen the work they're doing about ease of doing business to ensure that the environment for doing business is attractive. After now, what will be important is that there might be some investments looking for destination, and they only go to an environment that is more prepared. This affords us the opportunity to remove all the bottlenecks around foreign investment. So, but evidently, you need local and foreign funding, but we need to ensure that we have value for money. We know that nobody needs to tell us now that we need to reduce cost of governance. It is very, very important and very, very germane. When the money is not there, we will spend it rightly. But beyond what the federal government does, I mean, one of the things this opportunity offers is to begin to look at what the state government are doing. And so for us as the NES, in engagement with the government, to help see how can the state government take the opportunity of this time to look at governance at this level so that it can become more viable. Because no doubt, funding far will be good.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Laole Jaiyeola, Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we will look at the commodities market.